I don't believe that this is a real peace proposal. I don't believe that this is a real peace proposal. I think that they're still trying to manage the public relations of the ongoing at a time when even the Trump administration is beginning to recognize that the reputation of Israel is unsalvageable. So we shall see where it goes. Now let's get to Israel and Hamas to meet for peace talks.
Before the 2-year anniversary of the attack that ignited the war in Gaza, delegations from Hamas, Israel, and the U.S. will convene in Egypt today for indirect talks. It comes after Israeli airstrikes on Gaza over the weekend, killing dozens, even after President Trump called on Israel to stop the that demand coming after Hamas agreed to release all remaining hostages. President Trump appearing optimistic ahead of today's talks, but he warned Hamas that it will face complete if it refuses to give up control of Gaza.
It's a great deal for Israel. It's a great deal for the entire Arab world, Muslim world, and world. So we're very happy about it.
As part of a U.S.-brokered peace proposal, in addition to releasing hostages, Hamas agreeing to hand over the administration of the Gaza Strip to a Palestinian body with support from Arab.
Yeah, this literally was a concession that Hamas had made prior, but you will never hear that from mainstream resources, just so you understand. You know this because you've been in here for quite a while, and you've heard me report on this. But of course, mainstream media has not reported on this. So they make it seem like this is a new concession. Finally, the Trump administration has forced Hamas's hand.
Nations. In return, Israel would withdraw its military from Gaza completely and release Palestinian prisoners. A deal is not guaranteed. Israel has previously said that Hamas must agree to disarm, but the group has not said it is willing to do so. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says getting Hamas to disarm could pose a real challenge.
There are a lot of opportunities here for whoever wants to sabotage it to do so, and that includes Hamas, by the way, or elements linked to Hamas.
But for many in Israel, there is hope. Over the weekend, families of the hostages rallied in Tel Aviv as Netanyahu said he believed the hostages could be released in the coming days.
When will I see my brothers again? We are suspended between hope and dread. We have lived through Hamas lies before. We cannot let another deal collapse.
And officials say the talks will first focus on logistics over prisoner and hostage exchanges. Trump says he hopes the first phase of the agreement will be completed within a week.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is praying for peace. We begin with breaking news, my exclusive new interview with President Trump on the prospect for a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, almost 2 years to the day after the brutal Hamas attacks on Israel.
What are the chances this deal goes through? Hamas gives up every method of leverage they have, weapons and prisoners of war, and Israel just completely steamrolls them in an expedited final solution. I mean, I think you should have a little bit more belief that all members of the resistance, whether it's Hamas, but that extends to every facet of the Palestinian resistance forces, is probably aware of the things that you are aware of as well. If you're suspicious, of the American government, I think the guys who last time they got together almost got murdered by Israel in Doha are probably a bit more suspicious than you are. Okay? They know Israel a lot better, and they have been directly targeted by Israel and America a lot more frequently. What it looked like to me, what I saw at least, was Hamas, as the leader of the Palestinian resistance, came out and said, we favor the peace deal that you put forward by only conceding on things that they had previously conceded on. They made no mention of all of the extra details, like the Tony Blair Trump-backed viceroyship over the Gaza Strip. And it seems like Donald Trump actually appreciated that, because he saw the acceptance as a full-blown acceptance and was entertaining negotiations, real negotiations. Israel, on the other hand, was very frustrated by Hamas's acceptance of this deal. I don't believe that this is a real peace proposal. I don't believe that this is a real peace proposal. I think that they're still trying to manage the public relations of the ongoing genocide at a time when even the Trump administration is beginning to recognize that the reputation of Israel is unsalvageable. So we shall see where it goes.
As the president sends out a negotiating team to try to hammer out the details of this deal in which Hamas has agreed to return the Israeli hostages, but several points remain quite unresolved. The president answered my questions on text about his hopes for this nascent deal. I asked him, what happens if Hamas insists on staying in power in Gaza? The president said, complete occupation. Then I said, I assume you saw that Senator Lindsey Graham interpreted Hamas's response as a rejection, since Hamas insisted on no disarmament, keeping Gaza under Palestinian control, and tying hostage release to negotiations. Is Lindsey Graham wrong? The president said, we will find out. Only time will tell. I asked him, when will you know if Hamas is truly committed or just stringing the world along? And is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on board with ending the bombing, as you called for, and whatever else you need him to do to make this peace proposal a reality? The president said yes on Bibi.
I was awaiting for this text message to open up a real interview. Like, I thought he was going to talk about like these text messages and then eventually, and here is our uninterrupted interview, only to realize far too late that this is the interview. Like, I was waiting. I'm like, all right, when is it going to turn into an interview? Like, when does the interview start? Like, he's just leading us into this interview. Nope. When will you know that if we're truly committed, if they're truly committed or just stringing the world along? And is Netanyahu on board with ending the bombing as soon as you call for, and whatever else you need? Yes on Bibi, soon on rest.
As you called for, and whatever else you need him to do to make this peace proposal a reality. The president said yes on Bibi, soon on the rest. I said that I thought the Arab League calling on Hamas to not be part of any future leadership in Gaza, Palestine, was...
Also, this betrays all notion of journalistic integrity, not because is Jake Tapper texting Trump like they're besties or whatever, but also because this is not journalism. I thought the Arab League calling on Hamas to not be part of any future leadership in Gaza, Palestine, a remarkable step. How is that an interview, man? Like, CNN is posting this as though this is real reporting, real journalism. I can't even say this is editorializing objective reporting. This is just D1 dick riding, dude. No, this is NBA. This is LeBron dunk competition levels of dick eating from Jake Tapper. What the? This is supposed to be like the last bastion of liberal news reporting. But of course, because there is complete bipartisanship on this issue from all the liberals as well, because they also love Israel, they have to report like this. Oh man, I love. Not necessarily I study journalism and we were encouraged to do email interviews sometimes. Wait, what are you talking about, man? I also took courses on reporting as well. I'm not saying the format is what's up. Okay? The format is not the issue here. The format should lead to some better quotes than this. I hope, working hard. It's the statements that he is making. I thought the Arab League calling on Hamas to not be a part of any future leadership in Gaza/Palestine a remarkable step. Are they committed to seeing your plan implemented, and will they help with funding and a law enforcement presence of whatever is needed? I hope your vision for peace becomes a reality.
A remarkable step. Are they committed to seeing your plan implemented, and will they help with funding and a law enforcement presence or whatever is needed? I said I hoped peace would become a reality. The president said, I hope, and that he was working hard. I also asked the president, how do you think the government shutdown is going to end? He said, good, we are winning.
Like, there was no new information. Trump is not even giving him the time of day. That's so funny. Like, he's like so short. He is literally giving him like 2-sentence answers, 2-word answers. It's dog shit through and through. This didn't actually get any new information out of Trump. And instead, basically showed that Jake Tapper is not a sincere reporter. He's not a serious journalist at all. Information out of a Trump chat bot, dude. Are you fucking kidding me? So text messages considered interviews at CNN now? What a sad video. This is no interview. This is what CNN calls an interview nowadays. Calling this an interview is a joke. Did you mean your text exchange with Stephen Miller? Not exactly an interview, Jake. More like a text exchange with someone you hope was Trump on the other end. Jake, this wasn't an interview with the president. You texted it. They're more so mad about the texting back and forth.
We turn now to Secretary of...
They're not even mad at the right shit. Whatever, I'll take it. Any kind of fucking anti-Jake Tapper sentiment is good for me. Rubio says release of hostages from Gaza is the most emergent and immediate phase of the peace plan.
And National Security Advisor Marco.
Once again, read this as exactly what it is, which is these guys are being honest. They don't give a fuck about the genocide. They don't even care about the hostages either, but they care about the hostages as far as the hostages are presenting like a political issue for Israel internally.
Rubio. Good morning to you, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning.
It would be extraordinary to end what has been one of Israel's longest and bloodiest wars. The prime minister said he's only allowing these talks that will be underway in Egypt to go for a few days. What exactly is the deadline for Hamas and the terror groups who are holding hostages? When do they need to release them?
Well, yeah, so a couple points. Hamas has, obviously, look, we're dealing with Hamas, okay? So let's take that for what it is. But they have said that they agree with the president's framework for the release of the hostages. So what those talks should be about, and some of that conversation is already happening now, it's not waiting until Monday in Cairo, is the logistics behind the release of these hostages. How do you stop the fighting? Who's going to go in and get them? You know, when are they going to be released? Where are they picked up? What are the processes for this? That's what this conversation should be about at this point, because they've agreed to the framework of it. Then there's second beyond that is what happens after that, and that is how do we ensure that we can create and help build a Gaza free of terrorism, free of Hamas, free of anything like Hamas, and that's going to take work and some time, not just to agree on, but to implement. But that's important because that's what's going to bring a permanent end to these hostilities in the long term. And so those are the two phases here. But right now, the most emergent and immediate phase is the one that Hamas claims to have agreed to already. And that is they are prepared to release the hostages. Let's discuss through the mediators the logistics and the mechanics behind how that happens. And that has to happen very quickly. That cannot drag on.
So my sources have indicated to me that because the upper echelon of Hamas fighters has been so decimated, communication is difficult. The other terror groups who also hold hostages in Gaza aren't necessarily easily controlled by them. How do you manage around this reality? And is a full release by October 7th the demand?
Well, I don't know about the date. That'd be great if it was before October 7th. We wish it would happen yesterday. But there are realities here, and then there are things people do to impede progress. Reality is this is a war zone. I mean, this is a place that suffered a tremendous amount of destruction. That fighting needs to stop. You can't release hostages while there's still bombardments going on. But at the same time, that can't, so that has to end. But that has to stop. But you also have to work through the other logistics. Who's going to go pick them up? We saw how this happened in the past. The Red Cross would go in. They would be handed over through this process, et cetera. And so all of that's what has to be worked on and is being worked on as we speak. So I'm not telling you there aren't some logistical hurdles here, but I am saying that the expectation is that this happens quickly. And
according to Marco Rubio, Hamas needs to stop bombing the hostages and the Palestinian population. Because remember, these guys are not capable of ever saying who's actually doing the bombing. So to the onlooker, to the uninitiated, it almost seems like everyone but Israel is responsible for the fucking bombing. I guess it's the Palestinian Red Crescent or Doctors Without Borders or the United Nations or Hamas bombing the Palestinian population,
I would also say that while we want all the hostages to be released, if there are 5 that are ready to go right now, they should be released right now. If another 10 are ready to go in 12 hours after that, the next group should come out. But ultimately, they should all come out. And I think what you're hearing from people is, yes, there has to be some logistics that have to be worked through. But what you can't have and what we can't see and what we hope we will not see is that we get into these talks and these talks are then delayed and it looks like they're unnecessarily delaying it. That would be a very bad sign. Let's hope that's not what happens. And it's going to be very important for our partners in the region who signed on to this deal, the UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, etc., for them to be putting a lot of pressure on Hamas to make sure this happens as quickly as possible.
But you pointed out that releases can't happen when bombardments are underway. Our CBS team in Gaza tells us that there are Israeli bombardments underway. There were strikes Saturday, tens killed, more injured.
The media not pushing back on this is pure insanity? No, they are. They are to at least a little bit. I mean, this is probably the last time, you know, considering that facing nation is CBS, right? Yeah, exactly. This is you know, this is a fireable offense under the rulership of Barry Weiss.
Bombings continuing. One incident included 10 people killed when they tried to check in on their homes in areas where there are also military sites. Is that acceptable?
Well, I think ultimately what you're going to see here is that when an agreement is reached on these are logistics behind when the release is going to happen, then I think you'll see those bombardments stop. And I think some of that activity has already decreased somewhat. So there's a framework here, and the framework is simple. Once you agree on the logistics of how this is going to happen, I think the Israelis and everyone acknowledge you can't release hostages in the middle of strikes. So the strikes will have to stop. And as you saw...
Yeah, the strikes will have to stop because there's no other way to release the hostages. But, you know, once the hostages are released, there's no stopping the striking. Obviously, no one here wants the strikes to stop. I mean, they're killing people who deserve it.
The president stated that very clearly on Friday, where he asked the Israelis to begin to pull back to create the conditions for these releases.
So this is not a violation of that?
There's going to be a lot of complexities. Well, we're trying to get the hostages out. That's the bottom line. We want to get the hostages out as soon as possible. For that to happen, there can't be a war going on in the middle of it, and Hamas has to agree to turn them over. We have to have the right people go in and get them. That's what we're going to focus on right now, and that's what we've been focused on, and that's what the talks are going to be about today, on Monday, on Tuesday, to get this done as soon as possible.
I hear you. There are two phases here. With the Hamas releasing the hostages is the one you're most focused on, but big picture, does the United States assess that Israel has so reduced the threat posed by Hamas that it can end combat and transition to the kind of lower tempo counterterrorism campaign that, say, the United States carries out against terrorist threats to this country?
Well, look, I mean, the ideal outcome here is you don't have to carry out any counter-terror missions because there are no terrorists in Gaza.
But can they take the win? Can Netanyahu say he won this war?
Well, first of all...
Okay, well, never mind. The pushback is that we're not abiding by Israel's standards and wishes hard enough. I didn't. That's cool. I like that she's clearing the air here. For a moment, I thought maybe it was like, well, this seems kind of silly, don't you think? Did he say there's no terrorists in Gaza? No, he's saying that if Gaza is controlled by, you know, an Israel-friendly institution, then there will be no terrorists in Gaza. There will be no Hamas in Gaza because they will deal with any sort of resistance towards Israel because they will have undermined it. Such a weird way to word. Will Israel actually stop after the POWs are released? Yeah.
First of all, that creating a Gaza or setting up a Gaza that is governed by Palestinian technocrats that are not terrorists and are not sponsoring terrorism, that's not going to happen in 72 hours. That's going to take some time to build up, and it's going to require a lot of work and a lot of international support. And that's the end goal here of this entire endeavor. After you get the hostages out. By the way, if you can't get the hostages out, you have no hope of getting that done. So that's why I say, you know, that these two steps need to happen. But it's going to take a lot of hard work and time. You know, you're trying to build something that doesn't exist right now, which is a sort of civilian Palestinian leadership that's not tied to terrorism. That doesn't exist right now. It's going to take a lot of help from international partners. That's why having the countries in the region and the Europeans and all others involved in this, in both money and resources, that's why building that coalition is so critical, and then implementing it is not going to be easy. It's going to take some time here. But I think certainly for the first time in a long time, you see the framework and the outlines of something that could work.
But combat operations can end.
Well, that's the goal here. You wouldn't need combat operations if there weren't terrorists there. But by the same token, I would remind everybody, if in fact at the end of all this, terrorism and a terrorist group remains active inside of Gaza, you're not going to have peace. That's the fundamental truth here that everyone needs to accept. You're never going to have peace in Gaza as long as there are terrorists operating from that territory.
I agree, except the terrorists are Israel. I don't disagree. I agree. You'll never have peace in Gaza as long as the terrorists are still operating. Yeah, the Israeli occupying force.
Threatening the security of Israel.
But in terms of occupation and combat operations, that's different than a counterterrorism campaign. But let me ask you specifically what President Trump said. He told Barack Ravid of Axios that Prime Minister Netanyahu, quote, took it very far and Israel lost a lot of support in the world. Now I'm going to get all that support back.
Also, why is that your job? You're the president of the United States of America. Has anyone been able to explain to even like the average Trump supporter that this is what your president is worried about? I mean, he's not wrong as far as like Bibi taking it too far and Israel lost a lot of support in the world is true. It's even worse than the way he presents it. But why the fuck is that the responsibility of the American president? Everyone kept telling me when Brandon was in charge that Israel was a separate sovereign nation. It kind of doesn't feel like it. Interesting.
At what point did President Trump decide that Netanyahu took this fight in Gaza or his operations throughout the Middle East?
Dude, I know TrueAnon has the New York Times article. Look, see? It's here. It's already in a tab. I'm probably not going to get to it, though. Okay? Please stop spamming.
When did he take it too far?
No, I think the president's observation basically is that because of the length of this war and how it's gone, we've all seen the international.
Governors don't even get that support law. Governors get the opposite. If you're like a liberal governor, if you are a fucking liberal governor, you get military deployed to your cities. If you're the leader of a foreign nation state, however, you get unlimited billions. The American government took advantage of the shutdown to declare, to scale back $20 billion in funding to New York State, a lot of which was specifically going to go to New York City for public transit. They took $20 billion away. You know who got $20 billion in the interim? Fucking Argentina. Because one of the administration's mega donor allies has seemingly invested a lot in Argentinian debt and has demanded 2 bailouts so far, one with American pressure and then one directly from the United States of America. $20 billion. In the process of this $20 billion going to Argentina, Argentina has also, from what I understand, started selling soybeans to China. Why would China be purchasing soybeans from Argentina? They used to purchase it from us. Oh, that's right. It's because Donald Trump unleashed an idiotic tariffs regime against our number one economic trade partner that happens to buy a fuck ton of soybeans from American soy farmers. There is nothing that makes sense with this administration. Nothing. But I'm glad we gave $20 billion to the anarcho-capitalist dipshit Javier Milei while taking away funds from American cities. America first, by the way. Remember, America first, guys. Of course. It fucking feels like it's America last, okay? It's everybody but America first. If you are in an American city, if you're in a red district, if you're a farmer in a red district that happens to be selling soybeans to fucking China, well, sorry, sucks to suck. If you're in a blue district or in a blue state, not only are we going to take away resources, federal government resources that were allocated to you, but we're also going to fucking send troops. We're going to deploy troops to your fucking neighborhoods. Israel number 1, Argentina number 2. Anybody but America. It's not America first, it's America last. The fuck are we doing?
Narrative. We've all seen it, whether we agree with it or not. We have seen countries like the UK, Australia, Canada, and others come out and sort of signal support for or announce support for a Palestinian state. We have seen, even in our own domestic politics, some of the attacks on Israel. We don't forget what happened on October 7th. That's the other thing the president repeatedly points to is remember October 7th. But whether we agree with it or not, we have seen the impact that this has had on Israel's global standing. And I think that's the point the president is making here, is that whether you believe it was justified or not, right or not, that you cannot ignore the impact that this has had on Israel's global standing. That said, if we never want to see this happen again, meaning a war like this.
Wait, this guy doesn't believe that Biden said that they would invent in Israel in 1986? You have a tiny brain. Yeah, prove it, link it, dumbass. And then he did link it. And this guy is still saying, or someone else actually linked it to him. And this guy is still saying that this person has a tiny brain. If it frustrates you to imagine that Biden is a rapacious dick rider of Israel, then you should probably re-examine the way you approached Biden to begin with. Okay? Because, like, obviously your heart is in the right place. You're just oblivious to the facts, right? Ideologically, Biden is way more pro-Israel ideologically than Trump is. Okay? Trump is just invested in money. Trump just will go after whoever gives him money. He's too narcissistic to have any sort of like ideological investment in Zionism as a project. He doesn't give a fuck about that at all. Obviously, both of these parties have somehow found a way to be pro-Israel unconditionally and uncompromisingly pro-Israel regardless. So the output doesn't really change. Having said that, however, Joe Biden was personally invested in defending Israel.
Mm-hmm. You can never have another October 7th or anything like it ever happen again. And that's the thing the president has reiterated and repeatedly made clear to our partners in the region. And that is, if you truly want peace and stability and a better future for the Palestinian people, then there has to be a Gaza that is not governed or controlled in any way, shape, or form by Hamas or anything that looks like Hamas.
Does the United States support a Palestinian state? Because point 19 in your White House plan talks about a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood.
Well, again, we've always said, I mean, this has been a consistent position throughout, that the only way you're ever going to have...
We've always been invested in... Yeah, exactly. Goes to show you what that investment means. It means nothing. Okay. Oh, we've always wanted Palestinian self-determination. Come on.
Anything that looks like statehood is in a negotiated deal with the Israelis. We are so far from that right now.
Prime Minister Netanyahu opposes a Palestinian state and thanked President Trump for speaking against recognition of one. That's why I'm asking you to clarify.
Well, we haven't recognized the Palestinian state. The United States has not. And right now, there's no point in doing that because it's not even possible. That's not even a realistic thing right now, because who would govern that Palestinian state?
Well, it's point 19 in your plan.
Who would govern it?
I thought.
Well, but that's talking about a pathway long-term and in the future.
Right.
But before you can even get there, okay, before you can even get there, you have to have someone to turn that land. Israel's made clear they have no interest in governing Gaza. They have no interest in occupying Gaza long-term and being the government of Gaza.
That's so wrong. Israel absolutely has openly mentioned their interest in permanently occupying Gaza and also ethnically cleansing the indigenous population. He's just fucking straight up lying. Will anyone in the media say that's not true? Let's see.
I think Israel, I can't speak for Israel, but I think Israel would tell you they would love to turn over Gaza to a Palestinian organization that isn't terroristic. They would love to do that, but that doesn't exist right now. That has to be built, and that's going to take time. You're not going to build that in 72 hours. You're not going to build that in 72 weeks. I mean, it's going to take some time to get to that point. So that's the pathway this discusses. And I think that if you look forward into the future where there is suddenly a Palestinian government-like organization that can govern territory, then there's a lot of possibilities. But that has to be negotiated and agreed to by Israel. In the end, it's very simple. There can be peace in Gaza. There can be Palestinian governance in Gaza, whether you call it statehood or something else, as long as it is not terrorists that are in charge of that territory. That's what Israel did over Gaza in the first place. And then Hamas took over Gaza and turned it into a terrorist camp. And that's what's led us to the point that we are at today. So we can get...
If you had to appoint a new president of the U.S. today, who would it be? Benjamin Netanyahu. Might as well cut out the middleman. Make the real president run the show. Yeah, exactly. Now no one can say I'm anti-Semitic. He's an American citizen. He wasn't born in the U.S., though. But I think we can make an exception for a real American, you know? It's time. It's time for a real Philadelphian to be in charge. No, I don't think he was born in the U.S. No, I think was he born in Eastern Europe or Israel? No, I don't think he was born in the U.S. I think he was born in Israel. But he did grow up in Philadelphia. His family is from Eastern Europe.
Get off that road and onto a different road, there are a lot of possibilities long-term and in the future. But right now,
maybe
we are far from that. Right now.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Greta Thunberg, who is back. She has been released alongside some of the other hostages that Israel took from the Samud flotilla.
Be very clear, there is a genocide going on in front of our very eyes. A live-streamed genocide on all of our phones. No one has the privilege to say we are not aware of what is happening. No one in the future will be able to say we did not know. Under international law, states have a legal obligation to act to prevent and to stop a genocide from happening. That means ending complicity, applying real pressure, and ending arms transfers.
Dude, Nobel has a real opportunity to fucking do something crazy and just give her a fucking peace prize. You know what I mean? We are
not seeing that. We are not even seeing the bare minimum from our governments. The global Samud flotilla was the biggest ever attempt to break Israel's illegal and inhumane siege by sea. And it is a story of global international solidarity, of people stepping up when our governments failed to do so, of people saying that my leaders, so-called leaders who are supposed to represent me, who continue to fuel a genocide, death and destruction, they do not represent me. And this is a last resort, that this mission has to exist. It's a shame. It is a shame. And I could talk for a very, very long time about our mistreatment and abuses in our imprisonment, trust me, but that is not the story. What happened here was that Israel, while continuing to worsen and escalate their genocide and mass destruction with genocidal intent, attempting to erase an entire population, an entire nation in front of our very eyes.
I think it's really interesting how Greta Thunberg bricks people's brains so aggressively, because she basically lives by, like, she does everything. Like, she's exactly the type of person where people will be like, like, if you're such a socialist, why don't you live in a cardboard box? Like, she pretty much does that, right? Oh, if you're such an advocate for a green world, like, why don't you fucking bike everywhere? Okay, she does that shit. If you love Gaza so much, why don't you go there? She's like, okay, I will. Like, she goes above and beyond. Okay, the Mr. Beast of activism? No, fuck no. She's not the Mr. Beast of activism. She does things that are not even expected of, like, the average person. Like, she has her own standards and she follows them unconditionally. Like, she was hailed as a hero for years and years because she was a, climate change activist. And a lot of people thought that she was going to be like a easily consumable climate change product, right? That's the reason why she could go to, like, the World Economic Forum or whatever. Yeah, okay, I know. She's a trust fund baby. I don't give a shit, dumbass. Are you fucking going to Gaza and getting apprehended by the Israeli authorities twice? No, so suck my dick. Yeah, it's great. What a wonderful time to be alive that you got trust fund babies engaging in this kind of action. It's so stupid that people do this and say this kind of dumb shit. Greta Thunberg is a hero. She could have made a very comfortable life making Macronic and Obamic platitudes, sharing a stage with the likes of von der Leyen, but she went the opposite difficult path, speaking truth to power and showing up the liberal establishment for what it is. Yeah, she didn't just stick to pro-capitalist, like anti-carbon emissions or carbon emission restrictions. She actually took it one step further, and she openly became an anti-capitalist. That's when the media stopped covering her, or they didn't fully stop covering her, but they were like, that's a little weird. But then once she became an anti-genocide activist, an anti-Zionist, loudly, proudly, boldly, that's when the media started taking a very hostile approach, either never covering her at all, or when they do cover her, covering her in this incredibly snarky fashion. And we saw her development. We saw her political ideologies change. We saw her start recognizing what the real problems were. I mean, she was very young when she started doing activism. And I think that really breaks people's brains. Obviously, she goes above and beyond expectations. She goes above and beyond expectations. And it still doesn't stop people from finding something to shit on her over, right? It's so crazy.
They once again violated international law by preventing humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza while people are being starved. This genocide and other genocides are being enabled and fueled by our own governments, our institutions and companies. It is our responsibility to end that complicity. And I also... No, not heroes. No, we are doing the bare minimum. What we are doing is not in any way, no one has to come to the rescue of Palestinian people. What we are doing is hearing and acting upon their calls for people all over the world to take action and end our complicity, to use our privileges, our platforms to take a stance against this that is in every way unjustifiable.